Howdy and welcome to episode 69 of T-Shirts and Shawls. I'm Karen and today is Thursday, January 24th, 2019. Apparently I'm still not used to saying that. So this time I'm going to be talking about a knitting retreat that I went to this past weekend and some more thoughts on kind of continuing the conversation that I had last time about round table yarns and kind of my focus and the reason why I am even wanting to dye yarn to begin with and kind of refiguring out and focusing on that. So we'll go ahead and get started. I have a shawl to talk about in the shawl segment. So this is the Evanescence shawl, and it was the 8th project that I was supposed to finish for the Indie Design Gift Along to meet that Alpadu challenge. And I mentioned last time I did not get it finished in time for that. It is brioche, so two-sided. So I did not get it finished in time for that, but it is now a finished object. So this was a really fun pattern. I don't remember if this was the start or the end. When I say finishing, I haven't woven in the ends and I haven't blocked it yet, but the knitting part is done. I'll do the other part soon. Anyway, so you start at one end and do increases and you kind of reverse, which is the main color on the two sides. So you get kind of these wavy patterns. There are a lot of increases and decreases that are going on to make that happen. So you can see all the waves, and then you start decreasing to get back down to the bottom point. And again, this may have been the starting point and it may have gone the other way. I don't really remember at this point. So it was a fun project. I really enjoyed doing it. I have no idea why I thought this was going to be something quick that I could do as part of the gift along, but you learn those things. On Knit Companion, which is the app that I use. Oh, Wally wants to come say hi. The app that I use for the knitting patterns, there is a timer. So basically it keeps track of the time that you have that particular pattern opened up on Knit Companion. And sometimes I do have it opened up. He's gonna go right under the tripod and jiggle it. I'm sorry about that. Okay, try to straighten this out. Excuse me. Okay, so it keeps track of the time that you have that particular pattern open on Knit Companion. And sometimes, if I'm watching TV, I might like pause the knitting for a little bit and be watching. Or if I'm talking to somebody, it might, like a knit night, it might be open, and I'm not knitting. So it doesn't keep track of like exactly the amount of time that you spend knitting, but it gives you at least a basic idea of how much time goes into a project. And so I checked the time on this one, 58 hours and 58 minutes, so almost 59 hours. And even given those types of things, I would say that means it probably took me at least 50 hours to do this. Again, definitely a lot longer than in the gift along. Okay, I'm gonna try to get Wally not to nudge the camera again. Excuse me while I pull him over and get him in my lap. Okay, so yeah, definitely a much more involved project than in the gift along. Probably really needed. But I'm happy that it's done. I will weave in the ends and get it blocking soon. Let you see Wally's face rather than just other parts of him. So very happy to have that done. There were a few little minor, I think, typos in the pattern, but otherwise it actually lists out row by row instructions. So it's like a 25-page pattern. It looks intimidating, but because it does list out each row, that's why it takes up so much space. And each row is pretty much different because you are doing those increases and decreases and moving around and stuff. Anyway, kind of keeping that in mind, yeah, it was a fun pattern, a good practice of increases and decreases and doing different things with brioche. The yarn is Safroni ley lines, so that is the dyer Allison. She was doing yarn for the Knitting Fairy store, and got to see her at my Knitting Guild meeting Tuesday night. So it was nice because I hadn't seen her in person in a while. Since the Knitting Fairy closed, she's kind of been taking a break from dyeing. But anyway, I enjoyed getting to use her yarn in this project. And I'm happy it's done. Still looking forward, still loving brioche and looking forward to more brioche projects. But this one feels like it's been kind of on my back for a while. Maybe that means it fits the requirement of this quarters knit along, which I'll talk about a little later. But anyway, so it's done. I like it. Need to do the very, very final finishing, but really happy to have that off the needles. My guild that I belong to is the Arlington Hand Knitters Guild, and we recently had our knitting retreat, recently meaning this past weekend, and it was a lot of fun to get away. It was, at least for me, it was about an hour's drive away, so it was far enough away to be able to feel like it was truly getting away from home, but close enough where you didn't have to spend a lot of travel time, and I got to spend more time at the actual retreat. If you are local to the area, it is at a place in Weatherford called the Welcome Home Retreat Center or something like that. It's Welcome Home. And they take small groups or large groups. I think 27 is the largest they can have. I think we had 22. So you can even just go by yourself if you want to just kind of have a retreat and not really worry about things. A group doesn't necessarily reserve the spot. If like we had 22 people, there were still 5 slots open. So, an individual or a 5-person group could have come in at the same time. So you don't have to necessarily wait for a group retreat. It's a nice place that you could go to by yourself. Very reasonably priced, and the food is delicious. Absolutely phenomenal food. Sorry, I'm trying to keep track of where Wally went. He's up high again. Oh my gosh, hopefully he doesn't jump down on me. He probably will. So, yeah, he's up there. I'm gonna get him down. Okay, so I've got Wally down so that way I don't have to get startled. He was and here's Luna over here, trying to get her toy in my lap. I guess everybody just wants attention. Speaking of attention, Wally was up there giving my spinning wheel a lot more attention than I've been giving it lately. I really, really need to get that down. Retreat. So food. The food was absolutely fantastic. So not used to eating that rich of food and kind of that much food. There were several things that I went back for seconds on. There was this chicken noodle casserole one night that I definitely had seconds and very generous seconds on. And then there was a cake afterwards for dessert. And at first I thought I wasn't really going to be interested in the cake because it had it was pineapple, I think, and was it orange? Those of you who went, maybe you can remember what exactly was in the cake. And I thought, that's not really something that I usually like. So it'll be okay that I take this second helping of the casserole because I'm not going to eat the cake. But they put a piece of cake down in front of me, and I tried it, and it was so good. And I couldn't eat the whole piece, but I made a pretty good dent in that piece of cake. Anyway, so the food was really good, and they had 3 different craft rooms. So basically, a lot of it is for like quilting and scrapbooking. That seems to be kind of the main focus of the crafting that a lot of people do there. So you get this table, your own kind of setup area. So they have 3 different rooms. And so we were split up a bit. I think that was perhaps the only thing that was a potential negative, that it didn't allow for us, especially during the day when we were doing our crafting, to spend a lot of time as an entire group. But, a group of 22 people, that's a lot to try to keep together the whole time. But we did get together for a couple of, icebreaker types of games in the evenings after dinner, including a, fastest knitter with your eyes closed, and a buddy knitting type of thing where you partnered up and each of you used one hand only and had to knit as many stitches as you could. I will say I participated in that, and it was just as hard as it sounds. Although once we got into it, I think we got about 10 stitches, and then we suddenly found our rhythm. But it was like how many you could do in 2 minutes. So by the time we found our rhythm, over half our time had passed, and and so we didn't really get as many stitches once we figured out the how to actually do things. But we were getting there. Anyway, so there was a lot of fun. So mostly I stayed with a group of friends. We were in the same craft room and also in the same bedroom. They were shared bedrooms. And so I just got to spend time with them and really getting to focus on getting to know them better through the weekend. We also did some non-knitting types of things. We played Cards Against Humanity. And, what happens at the retreat stays at the retreat, but I will just say that it was my first time actually playing the game. And it made me feel like I'm a really, really terrible, horrible person. But it was also a lot of fun. I definitely think that there were things that I put down or things that I said that, like I said, just made me a horrible person. But we did have a good time with that. So I don't want to, go into lots and lots of details about the retreat. Again, it was just so nice to get away. I arrived on Friday morning, left, at like 2:00 on Sunday, so it was a nice extended weekend. And just, I didn't bring my yarn to sell, so it was just me as a knitter. I wasn't doing any business types of things, so I really just got to completely relax, and that felt really good. However, the only thing that I forgot about is that I am an introvert, and I do need to have time to recharge. So basically, and I know I've talked about being an introvert before, but even when I talked about some of the comments, I want to make it clear, introvert does not mean that you are shy. People say, well, I'm an extroverted introvert. That really isn't a thing. An introvert does not mean you are shy. An extrovert does not mean that you are outgoing. You can definitely be an outgoing introvert or a shy extrovert. What the big difference is that introverts recharge, get their energy from being alone. And being with other people drains them. It doesn't mean that they don't like being with other people. It just means that that is energy draining. And they have to recharge by spending some time alone. An extrovert, on the other hand, gets energized by being around people and get drained when they are alone. So sitting at home alone is not good for an extrovert. They just get less and less energy, and they need to go out and be around other people to recharge. So you can be shy, you can be outgoing. That has nothing to do with extrovert or introvert. It is how you get your energy. Now Wally wants to leave. So how you get your energy. So does being with people give you energy or drain you of energy? Does being alone give you energy or drain you of energy? That is the definition. Okay, so that being said, because of how the retreat was set up and the way the rooms were arranged, there really wasn't a place to go to be alone, except for possibly outside, but it was also, especially on that Saturday, just really cold. So you didn't really want to spend time outside. So there was really no place to be alone. So when I went to Into the Wool for that retreat, I did make sure to take some time just to go back to the cabin, kind of sit down on my bunk for a little while and just do a little bit of recharging, and then go back out and be ready to be with other people. And this time and again, it is my own fault. I don't want anyone that was at the retreat to feel bad. I should have thought of it myself and created some alone time, because our bedroom, when we were out during the day, people weren't using it. So I definitely could have gone back there just for 30 minutes just to sit and be by myself. But I did not do that. And I really, on Sunday, once I got home, and then on Monday, I was just absolutely wiped out. And yes, I didn't sleep as much. I stayed up much later than I usually sleep. And so that was a little bit of a factor, but mostly it was the just drained of energy because I had been around people for 3 days solid. People that I love being around. Again, I want to make that clear, but it meant my energy level was very, very low. On Sunday, I put Luke to bed, and we usually read in bed together. And then I turn out his little reading light, and then I leave the room. Sunday, apparently, I didn't do that. I turned out his little reading light, and I stayed there, and I fell asleep. And I woke up about 2 hours later when it was my usual time to go to bed, and realized I'd fallen asleep in Luke's bed, managed to get myself up, go brush my teeth, and go basically to my own bed and sleep. And then the next day I thought, well, first of all, Luke had no school, so I thought that maybe we would go somewhere and do something rather than sit at home all day. But I just couldn't. My brain did not want to work and think of things. I did not really have any energy. And I realized that what I truly needed was an introvert recovery day. And basically a time where I just, almost hole up in a cave type of thing and just be by myself, take some time for myself and recharge, which is difficult to do when you have a 7-year-old at home. So I was really kind of beating myself up on Monday about it. Like, I told myself that we weren't going to sit home, that we would go out and do something. And here we are, and I'm wasting time. Complete honesty, I'm wasting time playing a stupid game on my phone. And that is what I did on Monday. And then I realized toward the end of the afternoon what was going on. I'm like, oh, this is my introvert recovery day, and I should have realized that, and I should have planned for that. And if I'd done that, maybe instead of like taking Luke to the arcade, which is what I thought I might do, maybe I should have taken Luke to see a movie, because then I could still be doing something with Luke, but not necessarily have to have that personal interaction. I could still have a little bit, not of alone time, but at least a little bit of downtime. So if I had thought about that and planned better, then maybe we would have had, it wasn't a horrible Monday. I mean, basically Luke played Minecraft. I'm sure he was excited. But I felt bad because I didn't realize what was going on until much later in the day. And then once I realized it, I kind of forgave myself for earlier. So I just need to remember that even when I'm having a blast and a lot of fun and really enjoying what I'm doing, I need to have that day afterwards or time during the event to just make sure to recharge, to get a little time by myself, just to get that energy back. So anyway, it was a blast. I had a lot of fun, but definitely need to remember in future to keep that recharge going every now and then. And then I did some knitting, so I'll talk about that next. So we got Luna this new toy. It is like a pterodactyl, a dinosaur, and she has been playing with that nonstop since we gave it to her yesterday. But it's kind of, excuse me, slobbery, and she's putting it in my lap right now. It's kind of gross. But that's the crinkling. If you hear that, that is that toy crinkling. So anyway, knitting. This is a mystery knit along that I'm about to show you. It's the Hamilton knit along. I mentioned it last time. Young, scrappy, and cozy. So if you are like not wanting to see what it looks like, look away for a few minutes. So a little warning because we are still technically in the mystery part. So this point is clue 3. There are 4 clues, so we're waiting on one more. I think tomorrow is when the 4th clue drops. And I finished clue 3, but I do still need to weave in the ends from clue 3. So sorry about all the ends we're gonna see. But we added another word. I can't remember. Last time I know that I showed you at least a little bit of it. I can't remember if you saw the first word. So the first set of words was work. There. That was in clue 2. And then here in clue 3, so this is all Hamilton references, we have look around. So there's a line that Eliza says, and then it kind of gets repeated. Look around at how lucky we are to be alive right now. So look around. And kind of continuing that kind of star pattern, and we get it in kind of different. People were asking like, what should I make color 1, color 2, color 3? And the designer was like, it really doesn't matter because they're all going to kind of be used interchangeably. So you can see here, the blue is my background, here the gray is the background, and here the orange is the background. So they all kind of get equal play. Although she did say that color 2, which for me is the orange, is the one that uses the less yardage. So I'm guessing that we're not going to see a whole bunch more of orange in the last clue. I'm guessing. Anyway, so it starts out knit flat, and then you do these, you split and do these little flaps, and then in clue 3, she had us come around and join these. But we're not working in the round. We're still working flat. We just changed, instead of working this as our row, now we're working, since we have these flaps, we're working, it's kind of hard to explain exactly the construction. It didn't make complete sense to me until I was doing it, because I really thought that we would be knitting in the round because it is a cowl. But so far, we haven't done any knitting in the round, so that is really interesting. I don't know how exactly it's meant to be worn. Since the words are facing this way, I'm gonna guess this is the top, but I don't know if it's worn like this, if it's worn like this, because we still have, this is the live stitches, if it's worn like this, maybe. I don't know. So it's definitely putting the mystery in the mystery part. I'm not even sure exactly the construction. So it's a lot of fun. People who are not Hamilton fans have been working on this, and either they leave out the words, or even people who do like Hamilton sometimes just don't want the words. So it is completely optional to leave out the words. And some people have been putting different words in. I remember one project, instead of work, work, she put love, love. And then where it says look around, she put all you need. So people have gotten creative with some of the words that they've been using instead of the ones that the designer put in. So it's a lot of fun, even if you're not a Hamilton fan. This is definitely a project that I recommend. And it's mosaic knitting, which means that even though there is color work, so you can see, different colors, it uses slipped stitches. So you're only working with one color per row, and you're using slip stitches to get that kind of 2-color effect in there. So that is one project. The next project I finally took out of hibernation, the 3 sheets shawl. Gosh, I can't even, Ravelry knows, but I can't remember exactly when I started this, but it definitely has been a while. So it basically started down here, and then through increases has gotten this wide so far. And I'm now under 100 rows on the body, and then there's some type of border to finish it off. So it's getting bigger and bigger, but I am seeing kind of the light at the end of the tunnel on this. This is my Cornwall base, so DK weight BFL, and I do mean it to be a booth sample, so I want to have it finished for DFW Fiberfest, so that is the goal, and that's why I'm taking it out of hibernation and working on it more. So I'm working on that. And then I have the sock project, again, always working on a sock. I had not finished the first sock, but I went ahead and cast on the second sock because I wanted to try out those Hiya flyers. But I finally finished the first sock. So this is mustache yarn in the Everything is Awesome colorway. So sock number 1 is done, and sock number 2 is on the heel. So I have just started the heel flap there. I was working on that during the Knitting Guild meeting. So not the retreat, but the meeting on Tuesday night. And I am pulling from the other side of the ball so I don't disrupt the main sequence of colors in the stripes. I did that with the first one. So I'm doing that again. Hiya flyers, I'm really liking. They are, I want something with sharp tips. They are almost to the point of being too sharp. I guess be careful what you wish for. They are pretty darn sharp, but I do enjoy working with those. So now I don't know if my favorite sock needles are DPNs or these, either the flyers or the Addy Flexi Flips. I think the Hiya Flyers over the Addy Flexi Flips simply because of the sharp points on both ends. That really, for me, is something that I enjoy. And I don't know right now which way is my favorite way of working socks. I think I'm just going to still have to use both of them and see if I can figure that out. So then I did cast on a new project at the retreat, and this is one I mentioned either in the last episode or the episode before, that I was going to try experimenting a little bit with some of the yarn that has mohair in it. So in particular, a lace weight yarn that is a blend of silk and mohair. And a lot of people are either holding it with another yarn or kind of working it in with the project. So it's not the entire project, just part of the project. And so I picked a pattern that instead of holding it together, it kind of alternates yarn. This is Birds of a Feather. And so yeah, here's what it looks like so far. The darker color is my Camelot, so fingering weight merino cashmere nylon in the Taliesin colorway. And then this lighter color is the mohair. Maybe you can see how definitely a lace weight and the fuzzy factor of the mohair. Hopefully you can see that on the camera. And this is technically my Orkney colorway, except it's a little bit darker. The mohair yarn comes in a 50-gram skein rather than 100 grams like the other skeins that I dye. And even though I knew that, I forgot that when I was putting the yarn in the dye pot. And just mathematically, I put in enough dye for 100 grams rather than 50 grams. So it's technically kind of twice Orkney. So it's a little bit darker than Orkney is. But I think it looks really nice with this yarn. I think I might dye another one of actual Orkney and kind of see what the difference is. This is also meant to be a booth sample. So depending on how the actual Orkney turns out, I may dye another one that's the double Orkney to kind of sell at DFW Fiber Fest if someone else likes this particular combination, because I'm really liking how that turns out. As far as working with the mohair, I don't think it'll ever be my favorite thing, but it is enjoyable just to get something a little bit different. The fuzzy factor does make the stitches a little hard to see. So that is something definitely to kind of consider, especially on the ends you're doing a yarn over, and for like a knit and then a yarn over. And for whatever reason, I don't know, I'm finding that a little, I mean, it's not a tricky thing, but with the mohair, it does seem to be a little bit more difficult, more challenging. I've gotten to a little ripply lace section here. And yeah, so working on this project, there's still quite a bit to go on it, but it is fun, especially just to get that different back and forth of just completely different yarns. And then I will do another project with the mohair held together with the yarn just to kind of see what that is like. I do currently have 10 skeins of mohair that I'm planning to dye. I might get another 10 if I do another yarn order before DFW. So I'll have somewhere between 10 and 20 skeins at DFW is the plan. So if that's something you're interested in, then I will have that. And I think, this is not 100%, but 99% sure that I've named the base. I was looking at my list of names that I've reserved for bases. So there are some big like characters in Arthurian literature that you have not seen as a color because I've reserved them for bases. For example, Mordred. If you've ever wondered, why hasn't she used Mordred? It's waiting. It's on hold until I find the base that needs that name. But anyway, one of the names that I had on the list was Honor. And for some reason, I just feel like that fits. I don't know why, but when I was scanning the list and I saw that name, that's the one that kind of jumped out at me. So I'm 99% sure that's going to be the name of the base. But since I'm talking about Round Table Yarn stuff, why don't I end this segment and jump over to the Round Table Yarn segment. So in the previous episode, I talked a lot about the idea of some of my goals being these really big number goals that really weren't important to me, and how much stress that I had put on myself over the past year trying to meet those goals that, again, really weren't that important. Anyway, so if you didn't watch that, you might go back and watch that, because that kind of sets the foundation of this continuing conversation. So I mentioned that in my online business group that I am part of, and one of the people in the group recommended this book called Company of One by Paul Jarvis, and the subtitle is Why Staying Small is the Next Big Thing for Business. So I started reading it, and I'm almost halfway through. I bought it right away on Amazon after she mentioned it, and I read the description. And basically, a lot of it is reaffirming some of the thoughts that I've been having, and re-emphasizing some of those. And some of them have been things that I'm like, oh, that's something I really should think about. So I just wanted to show you a couple of things in the book that I've highlighted or written about. So at one point he says, for companies of one, the question is always, what can I do to make my business better, instead of what can I do to grow my business larger? So I even wrote up here, better, not larger. Because again, my goal is not to dye thousands and thousands of skeins of yarn and tens of thousands and sell them. I just want to dye good yarn, and so better, focusing on better rather than the numbers. So that is a key thing to keep in mind. And then over here, he says, growth can definitely be enticing and exciting, making more money, increasing a customer base, garnering national media attention. None of those accomplishments are inherently wrong or bad. They just need to be balanced with meaningful long-term strategies. And so, again, the idea that if all you're doing is focusing on those types of things and not looking at the bigger picture, or, kind of how that's meeting your goal, then that is what is bad, not necessarily those specific goals themselves. But as the example, he mentions, for example, by adding a pop-up message offering access to a free report on every page of your website. Here comes Wally's tail. You might increase the number of subscribers to your mailing list, but you also might end up with a list that has few email opens and more unsubscribes, making your net growth very low or even negative. So basically, and if you are a business, especially a small business, you are going to see everywhere how important it is to have something called a lead magnet to your email list. Basically, the thing that is going to get people to subscribe to your email list, so that way you can have an email list of thousands and thousands of people, and whatnot. So I cannot tell you how much time I have spent over the past 4 years. Which, by the way, over the weekend, around Till We Yarn hit its 4-year anniversary. So, yay! Anyway, so I cannot tell you how much time I've spent over the past 4 years trying to figure out what is the best lead magnet for my mailing list. What is going to get people to sign up? And I have tried lots of different things, and some of them seem to have worked and some of them don't. But ultimately, I don't necessarily want tons of people on my list. I want people on my list who enjoy, trying to get Wally away from the camera so he doesn't jiggle it again, who enjoy getting the messages, who actually want to get the emails. What good is having 10,000 people on your email list if only 500 of them open the message? I would rather have 500 people on my list and have 450 open the emails, which I actually have a little less than that, but that about proportionally is about, and I actually have like a 56% open rate, so I would even like that to get higher. But again, I want people who actually want the emails rather than just having tons and tons of people who get emails and don't open them. That's just that's just silly. And so why am I so focused on trying to get people to sign up for the mailing list? A lot of times I hear, and this is exciting. I feel kind of like this is braggy, so I don't want it to sound like that, but this is something that I should be proud of. People come up at a festival and say, I love your newsletters. It's so exciting. And they'll turn to the person, if you're not on her email list, you need to get on it. That's the way that people should want to join my list. Not because if you subscribe on my list, you get a free pattern or you get, a discount on your next order or whatever. I want people to be on the list because they want the content that I'm sending out. And then it's my responsibility to send out good content. That's the kind of the other half of that. Anyway, so that was something that he mentioned that was like, yeah, I really need to focus on the content and basically serving the people who are on the list rather than just constantly trying to get new people. And that's what like this whole section of this chapter is about. That's talking about how retention rather than acquisition should be. And those are kind of some business terms. But that should be kind of the goal. So basically treating your existing customers really, really well. So that way they will want to continue being customers rather than always focusing on getting new people and then having a lot of churn is what he calls it, a lot of turnover, where you're constantly having to get new customers to replace the customers who are going out because you're not focusing on your existing customers, so they're not happy. And thinking about that, those of you who have been part of Roundtable Yarns from the beginning, or even if it's just recently, just coming back and reusing the yarn, that is what is thrilling and exciting, and getting to see you the next year at a festival and you bring the thing that you made out of the yarn that you bought last year. I mean, that's what I love, that relationship, that build up. And I'm not saying that I don't want to get new customers, but I don't want to focus on new customers to the point where I'm not serving the people who are already part of my community. And you kind of think about that like in for cable companies, how they have these really great deals that are for new customers only. And if you're an existing customer, you get screwed. Sorry about that. But yeah, new customers, you don't get these special deals. You just get rates that raise and raise and raise every year, and you don't get whatever that special deal is for new customers. Those types of companies are valuing new people instead of their existing people. And that is, again, I'm not saying I don't want new people, because I do, but I don't want that to be my focus. I want to be, again, better rather than bigger. So that's, again, reaffirming a lot of what I've been thinking. And then he says something that I think is also really important to remember. It says questioning growth, or at least not scaling, isn't the same as staying static and unchanging. So I do also want to remember that just because I'm not focusing on grow and new customers, that doesn't mean that I should just let things continue on status quo and never make any changes. Basically, if I never add any new colors, if I never add any new information, new content, if my emails just start recycling everything that I've already said and I never develop anything further and just kind of keep it static, I think I would get bored really quickly, and you guys would too. So just because I'm not focused on growth doesn't mean that there's not going to be any progress or any change. It's just a different type of progress. So those are some of the things that, and there's more, but some of the things that have kind of jumped out at me as I've been reading this book, and I'm sure there will be more as I continue reading the book. There's also another book that I picked up. When you buy something from Amazon, it also says you might also like. It's like The Magic of Tiny Business or something like that. So again, the idea of the staying small and focusing on doing what you do better rather than trying to spread a wide net. So I've been doing a lot of thinking about why I'm dyeing yarn, why I'm doing the things that I'm doing in the fiber community, and and trying to focus on that purpose, that reason. There's another business book called Start with Why. Basically, if you have your purpose, your goal, and you keep that in mind, then your decisions that you make should always go back to that idea, and you should ask yourself, am I making a decision that's going to keep that why, that purpose in mind? So this is my goal. This is kind of where everything started. And I want to say that a lot of this is personal preference. I'm going to say some things like about variegated yarn and other stuff that if you love variegated yarn, it might seem like it's a little offensive. So I don't mean that at all. So, gonna start. Variegated yarn. It looks gorgeous in the skeins often, but sometimes it can be a really big challenge to find a project that it works with. If you hear squeaking in the background, that's Luna with her toy. So, you see this yarn, you fall in love with it, all the colors in the skein, it just looks gorgeous, and then you try to knit with it or crochet with it, and it's just not working. So you rip that project out, and you try another project, and it's not working. Or maybe you start a project and you know it's not working, but you continue on anyway. Maybe it's a project with a ton of cables, and you have worked so hard getting all those cables, and you finish it and you look at it, and the yarn is so busy, the colors are beautiful, but you just don't see those cables because the colors are hiding them, and all that work that you did, you really don't get to see that. So I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that variegated yarn is bad. I'm just saying variegated yarn is a challenge. At least I've always found it to be a challenge. I know other people seem to have a knack for figuring out what to do with it. That's not me. So mostly because I do like to work with things that are cables and lace, and those are the types of stitch patterns that don't look as good in variegated yarn. But it seems like indie dyed yarn and variegated yarn are terms that are almost used interchangeably. That when people say indie dyed, they almost always mean variegated, to the point where on some of the dyer groups that I'm part of, I have kind of felt that as somebody who does not dye variegated yarn, I've kind of felt like a second-class citizen. You do semi-solids and tonals, and that's not very challenging to dye. It doesn't take as much time. Let me tell you, it's got its own challenges. It may not be the same as variegated, but it's not like it's just super easy. In fact, there was somebody who just recently posted in one of my dyer Facebook groups saying, so I wanted to dye some semi-solids as, to go with some of my variegateds, and I'm having the hardest time. I cannot dye a good tonal to save my life. What am I doing wrong? And I'm thinking, see, it's not as easy as you think. Anyway, that's a little tangent. Go back to that. So, but I felt like, no one has ever said this, but it seems like there is an undercurrent that if you don't dye variegated yarn, you are not a dyer. Like, you're not a real dyer. But I don't like variegated yarn overall. There is some variegated yarn I do like very much. But overall, I'm not a big fan of variegated yarn, and I really don't want to dye it. And so I haven't, and that's why I've focused on semi-solids and tonals. And the reason for that is also because, and again, I don't want this to sound insulting, but sometimes I see projects that people have finished and they have really not done a good job matching up the yarn and the pattern, and the finished project just doesn't look very good. Either there is, like I said, there is a cable pattern that you just can't see because of the colors, or it looks like clown barf, which is a term that sometimes gets used, and it just doesn't look aesthetically pleasing to me. And again, this is to me. Other people can find it very beautiful, and that's wonderful, but to me it doesn't look aesthetically pleasing. So so basically my goal was to dye yarn for people who want indie dyed yarn, but who don't want all the variegated yarns. And so that's kind of my starting off point when I was beginning, kind of what I was thinking about what I was dyeing. So really so kind of the larger goal in that is that I want people, after you have spent so much time knitting or crocheting an item, when you get your finished project, I want you to look at it and think, wow, that's fantastic. Not, wow, I spent so much work on this and I really don't like how it turned out. And I'm not saying that I've never had, looks like Luna and Wally are wrestling a bit. I think they're okay. I'm not saying that I've never had a project that didn't turn out. I definitely have. But I want more people to have more projects that they are thrilled about in the end, rather than projects that they are just, that didn't turn out quite as well as I thought. Because ultimately, if you are happier with your projects, you're going to want to keep knitting. And if you're unhappy with your projects, it's probably going to make you a bit frustrated with knitting. Maybe you won't knit quite as much. And I think that's really sad. I want people to be happy with their knitting. I don't want knitting to be a frustrating thing. There are plenty of other things in our lives that make us unhappy and frustrated, and knitting should not be that thing. Not saying that I am never unhappy or never frustrated, but but that should be a small part of knitting, not the majority of the time. So basically, I want people to have yarn where they can work on a project and feel happy with the outcome in the end. And again, this is not to say that you cannot have a beautiful project with variegated yarn. I don't want that to come across. But for a lot of projects, it does seem, again, especially if you're doing cables, lace, color work, things like that, it does seem like the semi-solids and tonals work a little bit better in those stitch patterns. The exception to that, I think, is, and this is why I showed last time how I'm experimenting a little bit with speckled yarn. It took me a long time to even be slightly interested in speckles, but I think speckles work really well with brioche. So having a speckled yarn with kind of a lighter base and having a darker semi-solid or tonal yarn as your other yarn, and I think together that combination looks really good, and that is what has gotten me interested in working with and even dyeing some speckled yarns. So I'm also not saying that I would never, ever, ever do variegated yarn, but still is not really something that that I'm all that excited about. So really, this is kind of my other kind of big goal. And again, I don't want this to sound insulting. I want my yarn to be yarn that people are excited to use. I don't want my yarn, and this is just in general, so don't feel bad about this, I don't want my yarn to be the yarn that sits in your stash for 10 or 20 years because you're not sure what to do with it, or because you're trying to find the perfect project that it will work with. I want my yarn to get used. I want you to take my yarn home, cake it up immediately, and cast it on. Put it on your crochet hook. Do something with it right away, and not stash forever and waiting to use it. So that's not saying, like, if you've stashed my yarn, like you have now 4 years, you have 4-year-old round table yarns that I think you're a horrible person. I don't want to imply that at all. But I want my yarn to be yarn that gets used more than it gets stashed, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. But basically, I want people to be excited about it because they know that it's going to be something that is going to make your project look good. I guess it's not something that you have to wait to necessarily find the perfect project that it's going to work with, like I personally have had to do with some yarn in my stash. And this is also not to say that I don't have gorgeous non-variegated yarn that has been in my stash for 10 or more years. I'm definitely guilty of that as well. Yarn that I look at and I think, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I have not used this. This is gorgeous. So again, not looking down on you if you have stashed yarn and have not used it, but I want to create yarn that people are excited about, that people want to use right away, and that people are happy with the finished object once they're done knitting or crocheting. That is really my goal. And thinking about that, that doesn't necessarily mean that I need to get more yarn out there. It means really I need to encourage people to use the yarn either they already have or to get yarn that they are planning on using right away. And I'm not sure entirely what to do exactly for that. Maybe knit-alongs, maybe collaborations with designers to have patterns that and maybe knit-alongs with and crochet-alongs with other specific patterns, maybe things like that. But maybe just doing what I'm doing and creating yarn that people get excited about, because you can imagine it becoming lots of different things. So again, I do not mean this as an insult to other dyers. I also want to make it clear that I don't want anyone to ever feel like they can or should only be using my yarn. I want you to use tons of lots of different yarns out there. I do. There's so much gorgeous yarn. I don't ever want anyone to be limited to anything. I don't want you to feel bad if you like or use variegated yarn. A lot of that is just personal preference. And that's the other thing, that my yarn is not for everybody. There have been people who come by my booth and they kind of look and are like, yeah, this is solid. I really don't like that. I love the variegateds. I love the bright colors. I love the this or that. And that is fine too. That for the people who are like me, who want to do, a massive cabled project, then that's the type of person, that my yarn is kind of attracting. And so that's the other thing, that I don't have to attract every single knitter and crocheter out there. It's just the people who have a similar aesthetic, and who want to use semi-solids and tonals. And if you want variegateds, there are plenty of other places that you can get that from. And if you want speckles, I'll have a little bit of that. For now, we'll see. I'm only going to do that as long as I'm excited about it. That's the other thing. I don't want to ever have something out there that I'm not personally excited about. Anyway, so all this is to say that I'm going back to those roots of why I'm doing this, what I want people to get out of my yarn, the whole, making sure that you choose the best yarn for the best pattern, for the right pattern. That's one of kind of why I'm excited about having done that presentation to the Dallas Guild about yarn usage, and the class that I'm doing next month for the Winter Fiber Fun Retreat, which still is available for registration in Fort Worth, the class all about yarn. That's really my goal. I want people to be able to match up yarn and project and come up with an end result that they're going to be happy with, rather than something that they look at and they think, oh, I'm unhappy, or I wasted all this time, or I can't believe that my sweater that I made out of 100% bamboo is now a dress. I wish I'd known that beforehand. I just want to people to make good choices, so that everybody is happier with what we're working on. And that ultimately is my core goal and my core value. And that's what I want to focus on, rather than having tons and tons of followers or newsletter subscribers or whatnot. I just want to remember that core goal and make decisions based on that, rather than what's going to get the most likes on Instagram. So yeah, that is really what I'm thinking about as far as dyeing. I'm doing lots of dyeing for DFW Fiber Fest, which every day gets closer and closer. So making sure that I'm getting that. And I've been thinking about booth layout stuff, which I'll probably think a little bit more about and maybe talk to you guys next time about that, since this is already kind of long as it is. But yeah, there's lots of stuff going on that I think is ultimately also going to make me feel less stressed, and a lot happier with what I'm doing, with Roundtable Yarns. Because the past year, I'll be honest, I wasn't feeling as excited about some things because I was putting a lot of additional stress on myself, stuff I was doing to myself. And now I'm getting that excitement is coming back a lot stronger, because I'm realizing that I can take away all the things that aren't important and focus on what is important, which is just having fun, making projects that look good and that you enjoy working on. That really is the ultimate goal. So just a reminder about this quarter's knit along / crochet along. This is basically a quarter for finishing things. So it's finishing any project that has been hanging over your head. So it does not have to be a shawl. And it could be hanging over your head, can be decided whatever way you want to decide that. It could be something that has been on your needles for years and you just want to finish it. It could be something that maybe you haven't even started yet, but you've been meaning to start for years and now you're finally going to do it. So any wide range of things. So in the FO thread, there is already several projects. Sometimes it's hard to the glare off the screen, so I will just put a link in the show notes. Go over to the FO thread and look. But we've got some great finished projects, some garments that definitely, those types of things usually take a while. One project that just needed a bunch of tiny buttons sewn on, and when you look at that, it is a bunch of tiny buttons. Good job for getting that done. So getting those done, a test knit that basically went up until the deadline, a sweater for somebody's husband. So, just lots of really great projects. It's exciting to see some of those kind of just things that have been hanging over your head, just getting them done, so that way they're no longer hovering over you, and you can feel more excited about what you are working on when you get some of those obligation things out of the way. Because again, I think we've got so many other things that are stressful in our lives, and knitting should not be adding to that. It should be the thing that kind of helps us take away some of that stress. So it's exciting to see some of you guys clear off some of those projects. For myself, last time I'd finished the Let Go cardigan, so that was something that had been hanging over my head for a while. I think the shawl that I finished just now, the Evanescence shawl, that brioche one, that had been hanging over my head. I just felt bad about not finishing it on time for the gift along, and so I'm relieved that is done. So it is a good feeling when you get those projects off. Some of it, though, maybe you don't need to finish a project. Maybe you need to frog something. Maybe there's a project that's been hanging over your head that just isn't working, and it's, even if you finish it, you're not going to be happy. And so I think that frogging is also finishing, and so I'm going to count that as part of the knit along, crochet along too. If you've got this project that has been on the needles forever, and you decide to frog it, tell us about that too, because that is finishing it. That is getting rid of a project that is hanging over your head. So really big, broad, loose interpretation of that theme for this quarter, because I really think we just kind of need to clear our plates a little bit, and get projects going that we are excited about. I've got several things that I've got yarn already wound up for that I want to cast on. I wound up yarn for, I think, 4 new projects that I brought to the knitting retreat, thinking I have 3 days of knitting, I'm going to get all this stuff done. It's amazing, even in 3 days of knitting, you don't get as much done as you think you would. So I still have a couple of projects that I want to start, so hopefully I will get to show you guys that later. But yeah, I just want us to not feel weighed down by our knitting and our crocheting, that we feel excited and uplifted about it. So clear off your plate, get rid of some of those projects that have been lingering, and post about it in the Ravelry group for this quarter's knit along. Thank you so very much for watching. I just want to say you guys are awesome and amazing. After what I said about wanting to focus on my community, no matter the size, that the community is what's important to me. Some of your posts, both on the Ravelry group, on YouTube, and a few private posts that you guys sent to me, just really reinforce that feeling that you guys are everything. And this community is so amazing and wonderful. And it does not need to be tens of thousands of people. That is not the goal. What you guys, what we have done, not just me, what we have done together is really incredible and inspiring. And thank you so much for reminding me of that. I really appreciate that. And if you are a new viewer, you are valuable too. Definitely stick around. I want to get to know you as well. Thank you so much for watching. Come over to the Ravelry group on the discussion forum and chat. Post a comment here on YouTube, or send me a private email on Ravelry or at my Roundtable Yarns email address. And until next time, happy knitting!